Toby's small arms were wrapped around Minjun's neck before anyone could stop him. Dada, the boy whispered, his cheek pressed against the CEO's crisp white shirt. The whole office went silent. Minjun's hand, the one that had just signed a $2 billion acquisition 10 minutes earlier, froze mid-air. His face. The face that never showed anything, not fear, not anger, not even when his own father disowned him, cracked wide open in front of 30 employees and a security camera that would later leak this exact moment to every gossip outlet in Seoul. Across the room, Amara stood frozen too, her coffee cup shaking in her hand. 3 years of silence. 3 years of lies she told herself to survive. And now her son, her sweet innocent son, had just said the one word that could destroy both their lives in under 2 seconds. Welcome to Seoul and Afro Storytime. On today's episode, you'd get a dose of betrayal, power, romance, love, unexpected encounters, and beautiful beginnings. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and send this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd really love to know. Now let's dive back into this amazing story. 3 years earlier, Amara Johnson had never planned to fall in love in Seoul. She came as a consultant, not a conquest. Tall, sharp-eyed, with a mind for architecture that made grown executives nervous in boardrooms, she was hired to design the new headquarters for Kong Global Holdings, one of the most powerful conglomerates in South Korea, run by a man people whispered about more than they spoke to. Kong Min-jun, 31 years old at the time. Heir to an empire built on real estate, shipping, and rumors of something darker underneath. Rumors that said the Kong family didn't just do business, they controlled who got to do business at all. Amara didn't believe the rumors. Not at first. What she believed was the man standing across from her in the half-built lobby of his new headquarters, sleeves rolled up, studying her blueprints like they were the only thing in the world that mattered. He didn't talk down to her. He didn't flinch at her accent, her skin, the fact that she was a black woman commanding a room full of Korean executives twice her age. He listened. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost careful, like he was choosing every word on purpose. "You see things I don't," he told her one night, long after the building had emptied out, long after they should have both gone home. "Most people just see steel and glass. You see how people will feel standing inside it. That's the job," she said, but her voice wasn't steady. "No," he said. "That's a gift." She should have walked away right there. He didn't. What followed was reckless. Stolen hours in his private car after midnight meetings. A weekend in Jeju that neither of them planned, that just happened the way storms happen. Sudden, consuming, impossible to outrun. He told her things he never told anyone. About his father's cold hands. About a mother who left when he was 9 and never looked back. About the weight of an empire he never asked to inherit, one that came with enemies he couldn't always name and a darkness that lived just beneath the surface of every smile he gave the public. She told him about her own father, gone too soon, and a mother who raised 4 kids alone in Lagos before they moved to the States. About how she learned young that nothing was given to people who looked like her. It had to be taken, fought for, proven twice over. For 3 months, they were the only 2 people who understood what it meant to be alone inside a crowd. Then one morning she woke up in his penthouse and he was gone. Not gone for the day. Gone. A folder of contracts on the table where his face should have been. A flight to New York already in motion. No goodbye, no explanation, nothing but silence that stretched on for weeks and then months. She didn't know yet that 2 men in dark suits had visited her hotel that same week. While Minjun was on a plane he didn't choose to be on. Men who worked for his father and made it very clear what would happen to her visa, her career, her safety, if she stayed in Seoul one more day attached to the Kong name. She didn't know that Minjun spent that flight screaming at his father over the phone, that he tried calling her 43 times before his number was blocked from every device he owned, his father's doing, not hers. All she knew was that she was alone in a foreign country, carrying a secret that would change everything. She left Seoul 2 weeks later. Pregnant. Proud. And utterly determined that no man, especially not a billionaire who couldn't even say goodbye, would ever again make her feel small. He built a life. A good one. She raised Toby on her own terms in her own home, surrounded by people who loved them both. She became one of the most respected executive assistants in international business, the kind of woman companies fought over, Not because she needed saving but because she was simply that good. She never thought about Seoul. She told herself that anyway. Until the recruitment call came. Until the offer was too good to refuse. Until she walked into a glass office on the 40th floor and looked up to see the one face she swore she'd buried for good. Minjun didn't move for 3 full seconds when she walked in. 3 seconds. That was all it took for his entire world to tilt sideways. He'd built a reputation on never being caught off guard. Not by rival CEOs, not by federal investigators, not even by the men who once put a gun to his car window when he was 19 and warned him to stay out of his father's affairs. But Amara Johnson, standing in his doorway in a tailored navy suit with a tablet under her arm, did something none of them ever managed. She made him forget how to breathe. "Mr. Kong," she said, her voice cool, professional, like she hadn't spent 3 months memorizing the sound of his laugh. "I'm told I'll be reporting directly to you." He almost laughed. Almost. Because of course the universe would do this to him. "Ms. Johnson," he said instead, standing slowly, every movement controlled, deliberate, the way his father trained him to move in rooms where weakness got people killed. "Welcome to Kong Global." She didn't flinch. She didn't smile either. That was the part that unsettled him most. For the first week, they circled each other like two people defusing a bomb neither wanted to admit was ticking. She handled his schedule with brutal efficiency. He gave her nothing but short instructions and longer silences. But silences, he learned quickly, could be louder than any confession. Every time she leaned over his desk to point out a flaw in a contract, he caught the same perfume that used to linger on his pillow. Every time she laughed at something one of the junior staff said, never at him, never with him, something in his chest twisted so violently he had to leave the room. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself a lot of things. Then came the night she stayed late finishing a report, and a man none of them recognized walked into the building. Minjun heard the commotion before he saw it. Raised voices near the elevator bank, a security guard shouting, and then Amara's voice, sharp and afraid in a way he'd never heard before. He was out of his office before he even decided to move. The man had a knife. Not pointed at her, not yet, but close enough that every cell in Minjun's body went cold and then white-hot in the same breath. This was the world his father built. The world Minjun spent 10 years trying to clean, trying to distance himself from, trying to prove he was different from the men who came before him. And it had just walked through his front door and put a blade 3 feet from the only woman who ever made him feel human. "Touch her," Minjun said, his voice dropping into something Amara had never heard from him before, something low and lethal, "and I will make sure no one ever finds what's left of you." The man hesitated. Security moved in. It was over in under a minute. The knife on the ground, the man in cuffs, police on the way. But Amara stood frozen against the wall, chest heaving, staring at Minjun like she was seeing him for the very first time. Because she was. This wasn't the careful architect whisperer she fell for 3 years ago. This was the man underneath, the one the rumors had always been about. And in that moment, watching him breathe fire at a stranger to protect her, she felt something she swore she'd buried along with every memory of him. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered later, after the police left, after the building emptied, after it was just the two of them in his office with the city lights bleeding gold through the windows. "Yes," he said, "I did." "Why?" He stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat off his body, close enough that 3 years collapsed into nothing. "You know why," he said. She should have walked away. She wanted to walk away. Instead, her hand found the front of his shirt, and his hand found her waist, and the careful distance they'd both been building for a week shattered into something neither of them could take back. "I hate you," she breathed against his mouth. "I know," he said, and kissed her anyway. "If your heart is racing right now, comment, 'I felt that,' so I know you're still here with me. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. This story is about to take a turn nobody sees coming." She left before sunrise. But this time was different. This time she left a note. This time she didn't run from the country. She went home to her son, who was sleeping peacefully with his nanny, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collide with a man he didn't know existed. Minjun woke alone, the way he always did, except this time the absence felt unbearable. He sat up in bed, staring at the empty space beside him, and made a decision he never thought he'd make. He was done losing her quietly. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew yet, was that his father had eyes everywhere. And those eyes had just spotted Amara Johnson walking out of Kong Global Holdings at 6 in the morning, hair disheveled, lips swollen, looking very much like a woman who'd just spent the night in the CEO's office. By noon, that photograph would land on Kong Sung-ho's desk. And the war that ended their love affair once before was about to begin all over again. What will happen next? Drop a comment telling me what you think Minjun's father will do this time, and subscribe so you don't miss it. Kong Sung-ho didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. He simply slid the photograph across his desk and watched his son's face change. Explain this, he said. Minjun stared at the image, himself unmistakable and Amara beside him, caught mid-laugh outside the building at dawn, and felt something in his chest go very still. Not fear. He stopped fearing his father years ago. This was something colder. This was calculation. There's nothing to explain, Minjun said. She works for me. She left the building. That's all anyone needs to know. That's not what I asked. His father's voice was quiet, almost gentle, the way it always got right before something terrible. I asked you to explain why this woman is back in Seoul. In my building. In your bed. After everything it cost to remove her the first time. Minjun's jaw tightened. What did it cost exactly? Tell me. Tell me what you did. His father didn't answer. He never answered the questions that mattered. I'm not 19 anymore, Minjun said, standing now, his voice rising for the first time in years inside this office. You don't get to make my choices and erase the evidence like last time. I am the CEO of this company. My name is on the building. Your name, his father said softly, is on the building because I allowed it to be. Remember that. The room went silent. Outside, Seoul glittered, indifferent to the storm building inside that office. Minjun walked out without another word, his hands shaking with a fury he hadn't felt in years. Not at his father but at himself, forever believing distance would keep her safe. He went straight to her apartment. He didn't call first. He didn't think. He just drove, faster than he should have, through streets that blurred into nothing, until he was standing outside her door at 9 at night with no plan and no patience left. Amara opened the door already mid-sentence, already annoyed, already braced for an argument about boundaries and bad decisions, and then she saw his face and the words died in her throat. What happened? My father knows, he said. About us. About. He stopped. Because that's when he saw him. A small boy, maybe 2 years old, peeking out from behind Amara's legs, clutching a stuffed elephant, staring up at Minjun with wide, curious eyes that looked unmistakably, undeniably like his own. The world tilted. Amara, Minjun said slowly, who is this? She didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. The truth was standing right there in front of him, small and soft and 3 years too late. His name is Toby, she finally said, her voice trembling but steady underneath. The voice of a woman who had carried this alone for 3 years and refused to be ashamed of it now. He's my son. Our son, Minjun said. It wasn't a question. You left, she said, and now her voice cracked, 3 years of silence breaking all at once. You disappeared, Minjun. No goodbye. No explanation. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you vanished and I had no number to call, no address, nothing. I built this life alone. Me. Just me. I didn't leave, he said, and his voice broke too, something Amara had never once heard from him. My father had me on a plane before I even knew it was happening. I tried calling you 43 times. 43, Amara. He blocked every number I had. He sent men to your hotel and threatened your visa if you stayed near me. I have spent 3 years thinking you walked away from me. Not the other way around. The silence that followed was the loudest thing either of them had ever heard. Toby, sensing something shifting in the air the way children always do, stepped forward and reached his small arms up toward the tall stranger with the kind, broken eyes. Up, he said simply. And Minjun, the billionaire who once made grown men tremble with a single look, knelt down on the floor of a small apartment in Seoul and lifted his son into his arms for the very first time. If you're not crying right now, I don't know what will get you. Comment, I'm shaking, if this hit you the way it hit me. And please, subscribe now because what happens next will change everything you think you know about this story. Amara watched them together, this enormous, dangerous, brilliant man and her tiny son who had no idea what kind of world he'd just been born into, and she felt something dangerous stir in her chest. Not just love. Fear. Because she knew Kang Sung-ho's reach. She'd felt it once already 3 years ago when it cost her everything she thought she had. He can't know about Toby, she said quietly. Minjun, your father cannot find out this child exists. It's too late, Minjun said, his voice low, his eyes never leaving his son's face. He already does. Amara's blood went cold. How? Minjun looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, 3 years ago in a half-built lobby full of blueprints and possibility, she saw real fear in his eyes. Because he had someone following you the moment that photograph landed on his desk, he said. Amara, he's known about Toby for 6 hours. What will happen next? For a long moment Amara couldn't speak. 6 hours. Kang Sung-ho had known about her son for 6 hours, and in that time he'd said nothing, sent no message, made no move, and somehow that silence terrified her more than any threat could have. What does he want? She whispered. Control, Minjun said simply. He always wants control. A grandson is leverage, Amara. To my father, Toby isn't a child. He's an asset. He is not an asset, Amara snapped, fierce and sudden, stepping between Minjun and the door as if she could physically block a threat that was already inside her home. He is my son. He is ours. And no man with money and a cold heart is going to treat him like a chess piece. Minjun looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his chest cracked open even wider than it had an hour ago. You have no idea how much I love hearing you say that, he said quietly. Ours. Don't, she said, but there was no real heat behind it anymore. Don't make this romantic right now. Your father just declared war on my child without saying a single word. Then I'll declare one back, Minjun said. And for the first time since she'd known him, his voice carried the exact same coldness she'd heard rumors about for years. The Kang family coldness, the one that built empires and buried enemies. He raced me to survive rooms like this. He just forgot he taught me too well. That night Minjun didn't go home. He stayed on Amara's worn-down couch with his jacket as a blanket, waking every hour to check the locks, the windows, the silence outside. Toby slept peacefully through all of it, unaware that his father, a man he'd known for less than a day, would rather die than let anything touch him. By morning the war had already begun without them. Minjun's phone buzzed at 6 a.m. with a message from his father's assistant. A board meeting called without warning, scheduled for 9. Minjun knew exactly what it meant. His father didn't fight in alleyways anymore. He fought in boardrooms with shareholders and contracts and votes, the kind of weapons that could strip a man of everything he built without ever raising a hand. I have to go, Minjun told Amara, pulling his jacket on, jaw tight. If I don't show up, he'll spin a story to the board before I can stop him. What story? That I'm compromised, Minjun said quietly. That an affair with my secretary, a secret child, instability, that it makes me unfit to run this company. He'll use you and Toby as proof I can't be trusted with control. Amara's stomach dropped. Minjun, if he convinces the board. He won't, Minjun said, but his voice wasn't as certain as his words. He kissed her once, hard and desperate, like a man memorizing something he was afraid to lose, and then he was gone, leaving her standing in her doorway with her son on her hip and a fear she hadn't felt in 3 years clawing back up her throat. The boardroom was a battlefield dressed in glass and mahogany. Kang Sung-ho stood at the head of the table when Minjun walked in, already mid-speech, already painting a picture of his son as reckless, emotional, compromised by a foreign woman with no ties to the company, no loyalty to the family name, nothing but ambition wearing the mask of love. My son, Sung-ho was saying, has allowed personal weakness to threaten the stability of everything this family built. I move that we reconsider his position as acting CEO, effective immediately. The room buzzed with murmurs. Minjun felt every eye turn to him. He didn't flinch. My father is right about one thing, Minjun said, walking to the front of the room with a calm that surprised even himself. I have been compromised. By love. By a woman braver than every person sitting at this table, who built an entire life alone after my father personally orchestrated her removal from this country 3 years ago. Pregnant, terrified and abandoned not by me but by him. Gasps rippled through the room. Sung-ho's face hardened. I have records, Minjun continued, his voice rising, steady and unshaking. Flight logs from the night I was forced onto a plane against my will. Phone records showing 43 blocked calls. A statement from hotel security in Seoul confirming 2 men, employed by Kong Family Security, threatened a foreign national's visa status to force her departure. My father didn't protect this company that night. He protected his own control. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. You're bluffing, Sung-ho said, but his voice had lost its edge. Try me, Min-jun said. For the first time in his life, Min-jun watched his father, the man who'd never once looked unsure of anything, hesitate. And in that hesitation, the entire board began to understand exactly who they'd been afraid of all these years, and exactly who deserved that fear instead. If you're cheering right now, comment finally, because Min-jun just did something none of us saw coming. And if this story has you holding your breath, hit subscribe because the ending is about to break your heart wide open in the best way. But wars don't end in boardrooms. Not wars like this one. That evening, as Min-jun left the building victorious, his phone rang. Amara's name on the screen. Her voice when he answered was barely a whisper. Min-jun, she said, shaking. Someone just tried to take Toby from his daycare. What will happen next? Tell me in the comments. Do you think Sung-ho will go this far to win? And don't forget to subscribe because this story's final chapter is coming next. Min-jun's heart stopped. What do you mean tried? He said, already running, already shoving through the lobby doors, already forgetting every careful, controlled version of himself he'd spent his whole life perfecting. A woman, Amara said, her voice cracking. She told the staff she was his aunt, that I'd sent her to pick him up early. The teacher got suspicious because Toby started crying, calling for me. She refused to release him without ID. The woman left before security arrived. I'm coming, Min-jun said. I'm coming right now. He made it to the daycare in 11 minutes, a drive that should have taken 25. Amara was already there, on her knees in the hallway, Toby sobbing into her shoulder, both of them shaking. The moment Min-jun walked through the door, Toby reached for him too, small arms stretching toward the father he'd known for barely 2 days but already trusted with his whole frightened heart. Min-jun took him, held him close, and felt something inside himself shift permanently into place. This wasn't about boardrooms anymore. This wasn't about proving himself to a father who would never be satisfied. This was about the 2 people in his arms, and the lengths he would go to make sure no one ever came close to them again. This ends tonight, he said quietly. He didn't go to his father's house. He went to the one place Sung-ho never expected him to go, the press. By morning, every major outlet in Seoul was running the story. The disgraced patriarch who exiled an innocent woman from the country, who tried to use his own grandson as leverage in a corporate power struggle, who sent someone to attempt to remove a toddler from daycare under false pretenses. Min-jun didn't need to fabricate a single word. He simply handed over what was already true, and let the truth do what his father's money never could buy back: public trust. Within 72 hours, the board voted unanimously to strip Kang Sung-ho of all remaining influence over Kong Global Holdings. He resigned what was left of his title before they could formally remove it, disappearing from the company his family had run for 3 generations, leaving Min-jun standing finally, completely in a chair that no longer felt like a cage. But the real victory wasn't in the boardroom. It never had been. It was 3 weeks later, on a quiet evening on Min-jun's terrace, the city lights spread out beneath them like scattered gold, Toby asleep inside with his stuffed elephant, when Min-jun took Amara's hand and didn't let go. I spent 3 years thinking I lost you because I wasn't enough to fight for, he said. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life making that mistake again. You already fought, Amara said softly. In front of the entire board. In front of the entire country. That wasn't for the company, Min-jun said. That was for you. It was always going to be for you. She looked at him for a long moment, this man who once vanished without a word and came back transformed by the one thing his father's empire never taught him: how to choose love over control, even when it cost him everything he thought he wanted. I hated you for 3 years, she whispered. I know, he said. I'm done hating you, she said, and this time when she kissed him, there was no fear underneath it. No countdown to morning. No goodbye waiting on the other side of sunrise. Just the quiet certainty of 2 people who had survived everything meant to keep them apart, and chosen each other anyway. Some loves are quiet. Some are easy. And then there are loves like this one. Loves that have to survive distance, silence, power, and every lie told to keep 2 people apart, before they're finally allowed to simply exist in peace. Amara never set out to fall for a man with an empire and a darkness behind his eyes. Minjun never thought love would be the thing strong enough to break a legacy built on fear. But sometimes the people who hurt us the most by leaving are the ones fighting hardest behind the scenes. And sometimes the truth takes 3 years and one small fearless boy to finally come out. Do you think Minjun should have forgiven his father, even after everything he did? Was Amara right to give him a second chance after 3 years of silence, even once she learned the truth? And if you were in her position, raising that secret alone for years, would you have trusted him again the moment he showed up at your door? Tell me everything in the comments. I read every single one of them. If this story moved you, made you cry, made you fall in love with Minjun and Amara the way I did writing it, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell and share this with someone who needs a good cry tonight. New stories drop regularly here on Seoul and Afro Storytime, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Until next time, stay soft, stay hopeful and never stop believing love can survive even the coldest empires.